Okay, look, so let's have a look here in Photoshop. And you can see some of the things I was talking about there. So we go to image size, we'll see some information about the picture. So it's telling me that it's 3,000 and odd pixels high and 2,000 and odd wide. Okay. You'll notice here, it'll show me the document size. So I'm showing this in inches, so it would be 34 inches or this many centimeters. Now, this is something that really confuses people when they have an image and then they print it and it comes out a funny size from what they wanted. But it's important to realize that when you have an image in digital form, all you have is a bunch of pixels. Now, an image has resolution, but that only makes sense and only comes into play when you're taking those pixels and you're putting them onto paper or onto the screen. It's defaulted here to 72 because that's the notional resolution of the screen. But if I was printing this image, realistically speaking, if I didn't have 300 dots per inch, it wouldn't look great. So at 300 dots per inch, the most I could get out of this would be 10 by 8 inches. So I could do this kind of on an A4 and it would look pretty okay. But if I went to poster size, you'd start to see the pixels probably. So 300 dots per inch is really the kind of threshold of where you want to be. You can see that you have to zoom in quite a bit to start to see pixels. What's handy in Photoshop is that it tells you that you're looking at it here now. It's telling me, look up there, that I'm seeing it at 50% resolution. In Photoshop, you can zoom in and you can hold the Alt key and zoom out.
Alt, is it?
On a Mac, it's Alt, and on PC, it's Alt as well. Yeah. Okay. And this hand tool here doesn't actually move anything. It just changes the part that you're looking at if you're not seeing the whole image. So as we zoom in there, I'm at 50%, still looks fine. Zoom in some more. I'm at 100% now. And if I start to go in further, it's only now do we start to see the pixels. Now, Photoshop has done something funny there. It's actually overlaid a grid, so I can actually see individual pixels. Okay, so I'm looking at individual pixels now. However, that's at 1600%. If I zoom out, I mean, it was really around, I think even at 500%, the pixels are quite obvious. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert this image to monochrome, to black and white, okay? Because that's what we're seeing the world just in black and white at the moment. Image, mode, grayscale. And now it's just a black and white image. I'm fairly confident that Photoshop is storing this using 256 quantization levels, or 256 colors, or 1 byte per pixel. However, there's a very good chance that I'm not actually using all 256 colors. And there's a great feature in Photoshop where you can say save for web. Just a sec now, it's thinking. Wow. Something may have gone wrong because this is quite a fast machine. so we shouldn't really be seeing the spinning beach ball of death. Just going to zoom out there. Okay, so this is my original here, and then if I was to see this image with, let's get you the right thing there now. I can specify the number of colors. So 256 colors here. Actually, I want to say, sorry. So I'm going to switch this here to GIF. And here I'm saying, I'm changing the palette to perceptual. Perceptual, selective, or adaptive, any of those would actually have been fine for what we're trying to do here. Actually, I'm going to say grayscale, okay? And I can reduce the number of colors. So here is the original image, and, oops, sorry. I want to go back to the original. This one here on the left is the original image. And this here on the right is what that would look like at 256 colors, which is essentially the same, of course. If I go down to 128 colors, it seems to me we hardly notice any difference at all. If we go down to 64 colors, again, I can hardly see any difference. I don't see one. And this is actually showing us the 64 shades of grey that we have. If we go down to 32 shades of grey, which now is 5 bits per pixel, to be honest, I'm still not seeing it. You seeing the difference? I'm not. And then when we go down to 16 shades of grey, which is 4 bits. Okay, now we're starting to see it. Can you see the difference there? 32 and 16, you start to see it. But to be honest, it's still pretty good. And that's because there aren't really subtle transitions from one colour to the other in the original image. When we go down to 8 colours, which is 3 bits per pixel, you do start to notice then the difference. It's not quite as good. It also tells you what the size might be. So here, for example, my original JPEG, now we haven't gone into what a JPEG is or what a GIF is, but you've heard these terms before. When this image is stored as a JPEG, it takes 22 megs. When it's stored here as a GIF with only 8 colors, it's looking like, what's that, maybe 1 meg? Because there are many fewer bits per pixel. If I go down to 4 colors, which is only 2 bits, we really start to see it. And then of course at 1 bit it wouldn't look good at all. You just have 2 shades of grey. No, it's only 90K of course, because it's 1 bit per pixel. But clearly it's not satisfactory. One of the things we look at in this module is when you are tweaking the parameters of an image, you want to find that sweet spot where you're getting good value for money but not losing much by way of quality. And so this tool in Photoshop here is fantastic for that, because you can see the original, you can see the new version, and you can see the difference in size. Were I to reduce the number of pixels, then obviously the size would get smaller as well. I'm going to make a copy of this and duplicate it. But now I'm going to say image size, and I'm going to reduce the number of pixels in the image. I'm going to resample the image you have to select. And so I'm going to go down to 240. Okay. So I've reduced the width to 10% of what it was and the height to 10% of what it was, which doesn't mean that there are 10% of the pixels. It's actually only 1% of the pixels now, because if you have 1/10 in one dimension and 1/10 in the other, this is 1/100th the number of pixels. And clearly at 100%, you know, when you compare this with 100%, you've clearly thrown away an awful lot of pixels. And of course then it doesn't take much in terms of zooming for the pixels to be visible, because of course they're much bigger now. So here at 500%, well, you can't compare them that way really. And so clearly the second image, if I was to print this out on an A4 sheet, it wouldn't be satisfactory at all. So here there are fewer pixels, so the pixels are bigger. And these are roughly equivalent in terms of how much you can see. Actually, they're exactly equivalent because one is 50 and one is 500. So you can see there quite visible and noticeable pixels. So in Photoshop you can get a really good sense for the interplay between the number of bits you use per pixel, or the resolution of the sample, and also by changing the number of pixels in the image, by changing the image size, you can get a very good sense of how altering the sample rate affects the quality. So it's worthwhile spending some time in Photoshop messing around and having a bit of fun, because it illustrates those points very well. We'll come back to Photoshop in particular when we look at color and how color is stored and represented. But if you haven't used Photoshop before, you should spend some time just figuring out how to navigate around it and how to use it. And I think the most informative thing you can do in Photoshop is to save for web and have your original image and the image you're saving with the parameters in the 2-up view. And you can zoom in and out and you can modify the different settings here. And by the time we're done with this module, you'll pretty much know what the difference between a GIF, a JPEG and a PNG is, and pretty much what these parameters mean, what dithering is. You pretty much understand all of those things. We're going to look at all of those. But certainly if you've got time, it's worth messing around with these things in Photoshop to see what they do.